All right, so I got SQL Server up here. I'm running SQL Server 2016, and like most of the times when you'll see me doing demos, you'll see me using Stack Overflow's database. You can get a copy of Stack Overflow's database via BitTorrent. If you go over to brentozar.com/go/query-stack, I'll put the URL up here so you guys can see it. So if you go to brentozar.com/go/query-stack, that's going to get you the Stack Overflow public data dump that I'm going to go play around with here. And it's really funny that Guy has 50 ways to leave your lover as one of his demo things. That's one of the things I have in my demo databases as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to blow the plan cache, dbcc free proc cache, because the proc cache wants to be free, right? So then I'm going to go select top, we'll go select star from DBO users where display name equals Brent Ozar. And then I'm going to say go. I'm going to take the exact same query twice. Then I'm going to run sp blitz cache. SP Blitz Cache is an open source stored procedure that originally written by Jeremiah Peshka. These days it's maintained by Eric Darling at Brent Ozar Unlimited, actually. So what it does is it shows you like Guy's view, which is fantastic. I loved how he used a view to show you the plan cache. SP Blitz Cache is going to show me the contents of the plan cache because I want to show you what changes inside here. First, I'm going to blow the plan cache. Then I'm going to run two identical queries and show you. The contents of the queries aren't really a big deal. Those aren't really a point. But down here, I have, this is the output of SP Blitz Cache. This line says, I got select star from users where display name equals, and you see how SQL Server auto parameterized that string? It's a trivial plan. So SQL Server figured out, doesn't really matter what I do for this. Any param is basically going to be involving the same thing. I'm going to make my query just a little bit more complicated. U, inner join, DBO posts, P, everything in Stack Overflow. Actually, we'll do comments, DBO comments, C, on, UID, the user ID equals C, user ID. So normally you would never write a query all like this in one line, right? But this is a short query, so it's going to be easy for me to demonstrate. So I'm going to write a little bit more complex query that involves a join here. I'm going to blow the plan cache again and execute SP Blitz cache. And again, now this one's going to take a little bit longer because the comments table is huge. The comments table is 15 gigs in size. I'm not going to read a lot of data back. The number of comments I've left personally is only like 150. It's going to take SQL Server a minute, plus two, my SQL Server is just starting up. If you go look in Task Manager and watch as queries run, when SQL Server starts up, it doesn't allocate all of the memory right away. It gradually uses more and more pages as you demand it to when you query data up off of disk. So the buffer pool grows and grows and grows. Hugo says no zoom it. See, here's the thing, Hugo, you're not running on a $500 laptop. I know you, you're a consultant, you make the big bucks. You can afford a big screen. You just go ahead and show off, use your big screen like you would. So it's going to take this thing a minute to go through, and it's scanning this 15 gig table. Fortunately, I have a nice big VM, so eventually it'll be able to scan or put all this stuff into RAM. Now you'll notice also that SQL Server queries run way slower as SQL Server's allocating more and more memory. Now we're going off topic here, but why not? It's fun. So you can see what your queries are waiting on if you use SP Blitz first. SP Blitz first will show you what's happening on your SQL Server right now. The way that it works is it takes a snapshot of a bunch of DMVs, waits for 5 seconds, and then takes another snapshot and compares the difference between the two to tell you things like wait stats, perf mon counters, all kinds of stuff that's happening live on the SQL Server. You'll also notice I said it takes a 5-second snapshot. It can take longer to run under load, like my SQL Server certainly under load here. Gives me warnings about what my top wait types are. So I can see here what my top 3 wait types are. And it's waiting on CX packet, which involves parallelism, stuff happening across multiple threads. You see this wait, memory allocation. SQL Server's having to grab pages, set up pages, and start storing things in the buffer pool. This is an interesting, obscure wait type that you only really see during startup and as you're going and grabbing more RAM to cache data. I won't see this again once this query ends up caching the whole thing in RAM. D. Briskin says, 32 gigs for a VM, what kind of hardware is it on? Well, I'd show you, but it's mounted under my desk. I'm one of those anal retentive people who likes everything beautiful in my environment. So It's a Mac Pro, an old, I say old, like 2013 Apple Mac Pro. They take up to 128 gigs of RAM. I've only got 64. So I got my two queries here. I got two different queries that both grabbed all of the comments from the users table. And because this thing ran for a little while and also involved SP Blitzcache, notice down here I've got Stack Overflow. SP Blitzcache shows me here's the query that ran, and it executed 2 times. So back to our regularly scheduled parameterization type thing, I got one query that ran 2 times. Now, Guy showed you about how when you change the values in the parameter, when it's a big literal string, that affects the queries that show up in the plan cache. If I change this, for example, to Tara Kaiser, of course I'm going to end up showing 2 queries that were executed independently. But leaving them both as Brent Ozar, watch what happens when I just hit, for example, enter in between these 2 queries. When I execute it, now they're always slow, quote unquote, because they're having to scan 15 gigs of RAM at this point. But now I got 2 queries that are executing. Look down here at SP Blitzcache. Now I have 2 different plans in the cache. Just from hitting enter, notice that you can kind of see that there's a difference between those 2 queries. It's not immediately obvious, but I know that a lot of people, when they're trying to troubleshoot a query, they will take the queries from the developers, paste it into SQL Server Management Studio, and then what do? You go format it to clean it up, or you make it more readable. Whammo, you're hitting parameter sniffing issues because you can end up getting a different plan than what your developers did because you're technically running a different query. Now, it's not just line endings. I'm going to go back and take that inner join, go reverse right back over it. I'm going to run them again just to kind of show that there's nothing up my sleeve and show that one query shows up in SP Blitzcache. So here in SP Blitzcache is one query, ran twice. I have 2 executions here. Now, instead of hitting enter, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to say, for example, from in lowercase instead of uppercase and execute. 2 queries execute, 1 query leaves, 2 queries enter. Down here, look at what you got there. Uppercase from and lowercase from. Those things will also result in 2 different lines being cached in the plan cache. All right, so that's bad. Let's try this. Let's try, hi, Mom, over on the side. Same exact query. I got a comment after the semicolon. It's not before, it's after the semicolon. And now going down in here, I got 2 different lines in the plan cache. Let's expand them a little to see, and you can't even see that they're different when you're glancing at the plan cache. It's not immediately obvious that these 2 things are different. All right, okay, so that's a problem too. We've talked about enter, we've talked about differences in the strings. Andy Mallon had a great point when we were talking in the Slack channel. Watch this. I'm going to blow the plan cache. I'm going to execute the query once. Then I'm going to execute it again without highlighting the go and see what I get. And now I'm sitting here waiting for SP Blitzcache to show up. I'm like, come on, man. Well, you didn't highlight it and run it. In this case, they're both the same, but watch what happens when I add an empty line here. So 2 queries, I'll just hit execute. So I got 2 different queries, this select, and then I got this select, but it has a line before the go statement hits. Dun, dun, dun. 2 different queries. Even different numbers of spaces can catch you. So let's put 1 for this top guy, and let's put 2 for the bottom guy, and then execute. And we'll end up with 2 different strings in SP Blitzcache. So going all the way down to the end, whammo, even though these queries look absolutely identical, and for all practical purposes, they are absolutely identical, you end up with different strings in the plan cache, producing plan cache bloat, also making it a little bit harder in terms of troubleshooting. Now, who just added this? James Ucanis says, does SP Blitzcache catch different or queries with different or multiple plans in the cache? So take a look at the warnings column right here, and you see multiple plans. Multiple plans tells you that there's the same query and different plans attached to it. Maybe they're the same, essentially the same internally, but we don't have a way of seeing that without examining the 2 plans, which is going to be very CPU intensive. examining any kind of XML, shredding strings inside the plan cache is very CPU intensive and it's single threaded. So it would take SP Blitz cache even longer to run than it already does. I also love one of the things that we get these days in modern versions of SQL Server in 2012, 2014, and 2016. Starting with service packs in 2012 and 2014, you get details about memory grants. So I can see if this SQL Server, if this query has projected needing a huge grant of memory, but has only actually used just a little bit. Guy says he's just read through the Slack channel. Thank you for your warm words. It was a pleasure. He did such a good job. Warren says he needs a new laptop after looking at everybody's VMs. Raduk says, looking at the third database name, now I know how to name my testing databases. Yeah, I have so much fun with database names. So like one of my databases down here, you got that little guy. You can of course put fun things like drop database. You can also do, I believe this is Aaron Bertrand that taught me this one. You can say corrupt. Sure you want to rename it? Yes. So now if you want to freak people out, you can throw a database in there. Just obviously create a new one. Don't do this to an existing database. Put corrupt, offline, suspect, recovery pending, anything you want, you can throw in parentheses after there. We could throw in errors that people have never seen before. Danger, corruption detected. And then people just see this and they don't think twice. They're, oh my God, something must be horribly wrong. It's inside parentheses. All kinds of fun tricks that you can do to people inside Management Studio. Now, of course, you probably don't want to do this in production, right? You don't want to have people freak out that databases are broken in production. But here's another great trick you can do. You can set up an alias. An alias in SQL Server on someone's desktop. When they go to connect to one SQL Server, you can actually point them somewhere else. You can do it with DNS CNAMEs or entries in their host file, but a SQL Server alias is another trick because it even works on named instances. What you do is when someone leaves their desktop unlocked, you set up an alias to go from production over to a dev box. And then over on that dev box, you set up some of these database names that look corrupt or restoring. And then when they come back, you can say just casually to them, can you do me a favor and go connect to production, just see if you see anything weird that's going on there? I don't know if it's just me. And then they open up their database, SSMS, look at the list of databases, and they're like, oh God, oh man, I'm completely screwed. You can also, if you want to have fun with them under Tools Options, SSMS has some hilarious options inside here. Now you'll notice that my window names are fairly short. My tab names are pretty short. This is under Tabs in Windows. Oop, no, it's not. It's under Text Editor, Editor tab. So if you go under Text Editor and then Editor tab, scroll down to the bottom, you get options on what to include in the tab name. You don't have to have all that garbage that's up there by default, like server name and database name that never fits, so you end up with a bunch of trailing, periods. Instead, just pick and choose the exact stuff that you care about having up there. I'm a huge fan, for example, of Atom Mechanics Who is Active. Great stored procedure, super awesome for troubleshooting. But I may have a whole bunch of tabs that are going in here, and it's hard for me to find which query's which. So when I want to run SP Who is Active, I'll usually save it. So I'll save just SP Who is Active. This isn't the stored proc itself, it's just a tab that's got SP Who is Active in it. So it's easier for me to see when I'm jumping around from one tab to another. And then for the ultimate level up, you see the little pin here? You can click the pin and that'll put it in a separate row if you want. So even when I have, I'm gonna go throw a whole bunch of queries in here. Even when I have a whole bunch of queries in a row, those pinned tabs can show up in a separate row. This is a configurable option. If you go under Tools Options, and then under, I believe it's Editor tab and Status bar, where's the one that's got pinned? Let's go look at pinned. Pin, there it is, Environment tabs in Windows, and then Show Pinned Tabs in a separate row. Dun, dun, dun. So then you can just have whatever you use very frequently, pin it, and then it'll pop up in its own separate row up there. Other things that are fun under Tools and Options, I'm going to go under Tools Options, and then if you're playing around with someone else's machine, if I go into, I believe it's under Text Editor and then Transact SQL, Nope, it's actually under query execution. That's it, my buddy there. Go under query execution and there's batch separator. So Go is just an SSMS thing. It's not like it means anything to SQL Server. I can say, for example, engage. And then that way, when I have select star from DBO users where 1 equals 0, engage, then execute that, and it doesn't work. But if I copy paste it into a new window, it usually does. Ha ha! So for some reason, that tools options thing only takes effect. A lot of them seem to only take effect whenever you spawn new windows. You also can throw a number after your batch separator. So like you can say engage 5 and it'll run the query 5 times. There you go, useful stuff. Also, if you want, you can say tools options, and then instead of the batch separator being something that's attributed to Jean-Luc Picard, you can say select. So that when your users say select star from DBO users, execute, wait a minute, what do you mean select isn't a right syntax word? Well, it's because you changed their batch separator. So now that effectively is the same as go. So let's put this back because I use this VM fairly frequently, and that would be bad. I'd like to go back to go there. One other thing that I really love a lot, prompt to save unsaved T-SQL query editors or windows on close, screw that. Like when I'm normally doing things, I'll uncheck that, but that's because I write heinous T-SQL that should never probably see the light of day again. Let's see here, what else? The Hugo says, back on our parameterization demos, so let's go back over to those guys. Who knows where that window is? And of course, I got a Mac, so Control F4 doesn't work worth a damn. I know I should, and I should just, well, you know what? I'll just start a new one. How hard was that? That was kind of hard, actually. Hold on. Let's look at Window, Windows. Give me query number 1. Perfect. Now let's close everything but this. Thank you for using all these. Do I want to save those? No. All right, so now we're back to the good old-fashioned demo. I'm going to go back and have just one query with no spaces. And Hugo says, will a trailing space after the semicolon do it? Let's go execute and see. And I don't think he means a line ending. I think he means a space after the semicolon. I got a pretty good hunch it will. And it does. Oh, it does. It causes a separate batch or separate one to be cached inside here. And it doesn't even show as obvious. Oh, I love how that works. Hugo follows up with, how about selecting only the query without the go, but including or not including the trailing line feed? Yeah, that does do it. So I'm going to just, so I don't screw myself up here, I'm going to copy paste this select so that it looks absolutely identical. I'm going to blow the plan cache. I'm going to execute it once just like this. I'm going to execute it again with the trailing line feed, execute. And in neither case did I do the go. Now let's run SP Blitz cache, and I'll see 2 lines inside there, one with the trailing line feed and one without. Oh, lovely. Roddy says, pinned tabs, you might have saved my life. You're welcome. So speaking of saving lives, just as long as we're going wildly off topic, let me tell you a classic story from consulting. The statute of limitations has expired on this, so we can have a joke about this and laugh. We get called in for a performance tuning issue. Things are really bad. Performance is really horrific. And so we go in there and we start looking at, all right, what's really having problems with this? And we go in and look at the plan cache, and none of the queries have a where clause. It's just selects from tables with no where clause. And you try to keep the poker face when you're doing consulting, and you go, do you need all of the rows every time you run a query? The developers, no, but we process, we just get the stuff from the table and then we pick the rows we need. Are you doing that on purpose? Is there like a reason why? And they're like, well, what do you mean? So, well, do you know about the where clause? Like you can put a where clause in and filter for just the stuff you want. What do you mean? So then we start, showing here's what a where clause is. Developers, wow, this is amazing. They were so excited that they started putting where clauses on all their queries and immediately recompiled a version of the app, gave it out to the end users, and the end users were dumbfounded. They were so excited, they were so happy that all of a sudden the performance was unbelievable. We actually had flowers delivered to our office from an end user who said, for years, performance has been getting so bad with this app that I've had to come in earlier and earlier to work every day just to finish, because I would open up this app, and as I'm working through it, that it would take so long to render the screens. My husband was getting frustrated with me at home because I was spending so much time at work. You saved my marriage. The where clause, ladies and gentlemen, saves marriages. It's magic of the where clause. Let's see here. Next up, Crash Dance's story time with Brent. WJ Anderson says, when you post the videos from today, you should include the ones from Intermission. Yeah, we're totally going to do it this time. I'm actually going to grab out. We do a high level of polish for the presenter sessions. We're going to do a much lower level of polish for just the intermission type stuff. Let's see here. What else? Eisner says, I'd buy that audiobook. Curious says, what's the easiest way to temporarily disconnect from the webinar? Just close it and then come back in. G. Briskin said, did you also tell them about the magic of joins? Listen, with consulting, you can only show so much at once. You have to show people things gradually. I'm just kidding. No, it's, of course. Amazingly, they actually knew about joins. They just didn't know about the where clause. Mike says, and the guy next to me sitting at work are both watching and laughing at that story. Excellent. It's the hardest thing about consulting is the poker face. That's the hard part. Aid says, do you fancy showing a little of expert mode? Because some of us were talking about expert mode for some of our stored procedures in Slack. So let's do this. I'm going to say expert mode equals 1. Now, I'm also going to do something else. Let's do, let me show you, let me go grab a query actually, because this will help explain what I'm about to say with expert mode. So I teach a lot of performance classes. I just got done teaching one of them actually. It was my whole week. And I know one of these demos forwards and backwards because I had to give it. Let me go grab this thing. Where is 2 point? There we go, copy. All right, so Guy showed you a lot of cool stuff around parameter sniffing. I'm going to create an index, and then I'm going to blow away my plan cache. Let's see here, execute, dbcc free proc cache, go, and I'm going to run a couple of stored procedures. So one of the things that expert mode in SP Blitz cache is really useful for, if I go SP Blitz cache at expert mode equals 1. Actually, I need to do that differently. Let me go do this other set of params. Cut. There we go. Let's run it with expert mode there. Let's go do that. Bang. One of the things that expert mode is really good for is in SP Blitz cache, it warns you about parameter sniffing. It'll warn you if, like Guy showed you in the last session, sometimes a query hardly takes any time and sometimes it takes a whole ton of time. Well, we can detect that in SP Blitz cache. It is kind of duct tapey. What we're doing is we're looking at queries that sometimes do a tiny amount of reads or CPU and sometimes do, say, 100x more reads or CPU. This is about as good as we get for detecting live parameter sniffing. In that case, we go through and say, we have a warning in the warnings column about parameter sniffing. What you would want to do is capture that plan, give it to the developers, and then have them go work on it. So here's SP Blitz cache down here. So it's got a warning it's got lots of warnings because my queries suck. These queries that are in here, I got a query that's vulnerable to parameter sniffing. And under real life, you would have a huge number of queries in here. I'm just doing it in a testing lab. So I got warnings in here. I have a query that's vulnerable to parameter sniffing. With expert mode, I can scroll across and I get the query plan. So I can click on the query plan, opens up here. It says, hey, buddy, you really need a window. I wouldn't need an index. I know, I get it. Now I know that this is a plan that's vulnerable, but I need to save this and give it to my developers because I'm about to make this go away. I'm going to say parameter sniffing emergency 2017-04-21. And I'm not going to try and fix it live. This query also includes the parameters. Whoops, let me get back out of here. If I right click on the select and go into properties, I can see the parameter list that it was called with to generate the bad plan, bad quote unquote. I don't know what parameters people are using live in real time that are getting crappy queries, but this just at least gives me enough that I can go hand it to my developers or put it in my own queue for performance tuning. I'm going to save that, but then I need to go get this plan out of memory. There's this little gem out here. You can nuke a specific query plan or a specific query out of the plan cache. You'll see presenters using DBCC free proc cache a lot. That's like taking a claw hammer to your server and giving it amnesia. That's an aggressive way of fixing parameter sniffing. This is the Men in Black flashy thingy where it just nukes that one plan from the cache. I can right click on there, or in this case, one SQL query or one plan if I think this is just the bad plan. I can right click, copy that, paste it, and this is safe to run. I can just blow this one plan out of cache. I'm not fixing the parameter sniffing emergency. All I'm doing is making the emergency go away so that then I can go troubleshoot and figure out what would make a good plan. I need to fix it long term by using the techniques Guy described to you in that last session. Let's see here. Julia says, text faces, yep. Blue Galia, that's it. Oh, Bill Lugalia, he's got an alias in there. Says he ran SP Blitz cache and he found a warning about compilation timeout. Is there anything that I can do to make that better? Well, SQL Server, you don't get a knob really directly that you can tweak to change compilation timeouts. There's a trace flag you can call that will extend compilation time across the board for everyone. I'm not even going to name that because I don't like that. It's going to make all of your queries take longer time in order to compile. That's not generally a good idea. What you could do is you could experiment to get exactly the plan you want and use a plan guide left behind. Teaching you how to use a plan guide is pretty ambitious. Guy showed a little bit of plan guides in the last session to how to strip parameters out of a particular plan. But if you want to learn more about plan guides, go check those out, and there are ways to stick a plan in memory permanently. They have a ton of gotchas, like if anything changes about the query, you're screwed. The plan guide's no longer going to be useful, but it can help you get around certain emergencies. Let's see here. Mike says, can you have multiple batch separators? So whenever someone says, can you do something, I immediately put on my bad idea jeans. Theoretically, no. Practically, probably. How about, I'm going to do something truly horrible. I'm ashamed to be doing this in front of 303 people, but why not, right? What if I said create proc engage as, I wonder if I could do checkpoint, go, execute. So now I can say select stuff. Well, let's do select top 10 star from Stack Overflow DBO users, engage. Oh, oh, it is DBO. Will it just do engage? Oh, it does separately, but normally I can get it to call a stored proc by name. Why? Yeah, Hugo says exec engage, but that's cheating. I don't like that. That's not right. That's odd. Why can't I call that? But I can call, like, for example, SP. Oh, if I name it with SP. Hugo says you need exec unless it's the start of the batch. Oh, so I can't do like SP. He's saying I can't do SP Blitz, SP Blitz. Because it's going to assume it's a parameter for, probably even if I do this. Yeah, dang it. So you need exec on the second one. Oh, geez, that blows. Man, I was really hoping that I could find a way to work around that. Oh, great moments and bad ideas. Hugo says it's better to get in the habit of always using exec. Yeah, but we're trying to cheat here, Hugo. That was the point of it, was to do something tricky to give us like a separate batch separator. Oh, I wonder, there's got to be a way to get around doing that. Let's see. Elsimer says indexes are for the weak. Let's put it in a heap instead. Richie says if you liked it, then you should have put a heap on it. So I actually use Beyonce in my indexing classes for clustered indexes. I say if you love it, you should put a key on it. Key has a better ring kind of to it. Let's see. Raduk says I must be grateful for the developers I have because they actually know and want to use a where clause. Yeah, that's. I am so grateful for Richie, who's awesome, amazing developer, because especially since I've been a developer before, and I know how hard development is. Wow. Okay, so Raduk says, what about using a semicolon as a separator? So I don't think you can use emoji. Why doesn't that? So let's try that. Let's try this, copy. And then let's go Tools, Options. For our separator, let's do that. Okay. So then this. Oh, nope, that doesn't work. Oh, well, okay, so it's that. Maybe let's see if, no, I don't think that's going to work. Maybe, I wonder if there's any other string that might work. Maybe without the parentheses. Let's try just 3 underscores in a row. Watch Brent break the bejesus out of SQL Server. Let's find out what tools options will accept as a batch separator. So do 3 underscores in a row work? No, they don't. Let's see here. Crispy says, Brent, go back to parameter sniffing. No, look, I'm having fun. I want to have some fun here. AM2, and a couple of people say try to hit a new window. Good point. Okay, so let's go back to, so I got 3 underscores right now. Let's hit a new window. Let's copy our query from the old window. Copy, paste. Oh, look at that. Oh, so then maybe we can use our buddy here, the shrug. Oh, let's try it. Tools, options. Please let this work. That would be so amazing. Select get date. No. Oh, that would be so sweet. So now at least we're to the point where we can figure out which characters work. That's probably a little ambitious, but let's try it. Tools, options, U, okay. New window, select, get date, U. It does work. Oh, that's awesome. So now we can start trying to figure out which exact characters SQL Server will allow us to use inside. DBA Youngling says try a pipe. Yeah, so I'll leave this guys to you guys to figure out. We'll do a blog post at some point next week and then put in various scripts that you can use as your shrug. Joris says, a day at the life of Brent Ozar Unlimited. This is pretty much how it works. Someone says, just drop the tick. There's no tick in there. That's actually not a tick. That's something else. It's possible that this might work. We'll try this. Or you know what? I bet this will work. Let's try this. Copy, tools, options, and yay! So now, new window, select get date. Yay! Execute. No, it doesn't work. Maybe the dancing will, because the other one didn't. It didn't. Oh, no. Yeah, we still get a fuzz. All right. Mike says we're in the process of setting consistent coding standards. I think the smiley face might have just made an appearance. All right, so we'll get back to Crispy's thing. Crispy says, back to parameter sniffing. I think if a certain query from an app is rarely vulnerable to parameter sniffing, is there a way to trace the query to capture when parameter sniffing causes a bad plan? Yes, if you're on 2016, the very next session with Enrico will tell you exactly how to do that. If you don't have the luxury of being on 2016 and you want to capture plans over time, what you could do is you can run SP Blitz Cache to a table. So you can say SP Blitz Cache output database name equals DBA tools, output schema name equals DBO, output table name equals query, we'll just call it SP Blitz cache results. So I can execute this, and honest to God, this is the first time I've ever done this in my life, so I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't work. True story. I think I might have done this in testing once or twice, and that's probably about it. So now I can go select star from DBA tools, DBO, SP Blitz cache results. So now you can get your query plans out over time. So what you could do is set this up to run, and I need to scroll across here. If I scroll across, it's going to hopefully, yeah, good. There it shows you the query plans. So what you could do is you could run this in a batch job every 5 minutes, every 15 minutes, whatever. You'll notice that at the beginning of the table, there's an identity field, there's a server name and a check date. So you can actually run this in an agent job every 10 minutes or however often you want, and it just appends to the table. It creates the table if it doesn't already exist, and then appends. Pavel says, record the Q&As. No, you don't have to bother recording the Q&As. I'll just use the GoToWebinar recording just to get it out quick and easy and cheap. I say cheap, like as a really crappy quality kind of thing. So you could dump this stuff into a table every X minutes, however often you want, and then go back and query things over time. If you want to get more ambitious, check out SP Blitz cache at expert mode equals 1. Now, when I run it in expert mode, you're going to get things around, and this might even be in the default calls. You're going to get a query hash and a plan hash. So I think you're going to get that. Yeah, there we go. Query hash and query plan hash. What these are good for is if you want to detect when a query's plan changes, and if you know what the query hash is, let's say that this one stored procedure, or this line in this stored procedure is constantly giving me problems, and I want to know when it changes. I can actually query the DMVs directly. I don't even have to use SP Blitz cache. See how there's a query plan hash and a query hash here? I can go query the DMVs and just say, tell me whenever this query hash gets a different query plan hash, maybe write that to a table. That is left as an exercise to the reader. The next session, Enrico on the query store will give you how SQL Server does it built in, which I'm such a huge fan of in 2016. It's fabulous. Crispy says, that's nice. I could make a trimmed down version to get just what you need for lower overhead. Absolutely, yeah. It's the SP Blitz Cache 2, by the way, is totally open source. All our stuff is under the MIT license. If you go to firstresponderkit.org. So if you go to firstresponderkit.org, I'm going to copy paste that just because it's going to disappear once it gets to GitHub. Firstresponderkit.org. What this does is then it is our GitHub repository, and it has things like the code license. We license under the MIT license, so you're free to take this code and run with it. Just make sure you include the original copyright, because portions of it are copyrighted by other people, also under the MIT license. For example, we've taken code from Microsoft as part of the Tiger toolkit, and from Greg White DBA's code for our database restore stored procedure. I bet a lot of you out there are using Ola Hollengren's backup scripts. How are you going to do a restore? Well, I'm going to go through the GUI and I'm going to click around a lot. The hell you are. During an emergency, when a production SQL server goes down, you do that once and then you figure out you want to have a better way of doing that. So Tara took Greg White's code for database restore, and she built a new stored procedure that goes in and looks in a folder, pulls the most recent full, pulls all the log file sense, and builds a nice tidy restore script for you. So you can just execute this and go build a huge restore script for all of the full and log files that you have. Way easier. Okay, so I think we're pretty good there on questions and answers. Feel free to chime in if you have any other questions that you want to ask. Is there anything else I want to show you in SQL Server Management Studio? If you haven't seen the live query plan stuff, let me give you one other thing that's really cool. Katie says, what was the name of the woman with the backup script? She's actually in chat right now, so she'll chime in. I assume she might have stepped away from the keyboard. Tara Kaiser, former database administrator at ginormous companies, and now she's come to work with us. So she is Tara Kaiser, and it's part of our first responder kit. So if you go to brentozar.com, click Tools at the top, and then it's Database Restore inside there. So a lot of times when someone gives me a query, I'm going to jump in and use Stack Overflow. Well, first I'm going to fix my batch separator because that's going to be a fun. I've got to make an emoji work. It just has to. I'm that kind of person. That's what I'm going to probably be doing during all of Enrico's session is just, you'll see me hunched over at the keyboard slaving away. It's probably won't be because I'm paying attention. It's because I'm working on trying to figure out my batch separator. Sometimes people will give you a big ugly query and you go to run it and it takes like 20 minutes in order to run and you're like, man, I'd really like to have the real execution plan, but it takes forever in order to get it. Nobody has time for that. What you can do, starting with SQL Server 2014 SP1 on the back end and Management Studio 2016 on the front end, you can click Query, Include Live Query Statistics. So I'm going to click Include Live Query Statistics and then go Execute. And look at what I get inside here is nothing because SQL Server Management Studio is so full of bugs. I'm partially kidding, but not really. Execute. It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Listen, SQL Server, seriously, I'm not playing around. Give me the live query statistics. And this happens to me all the frickin' time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. It might actually be waiting for the live query plan too. Well, there it goes. All right, perfect. So you get an animated execution plan of what's happening here. Shows you that we're doing a clustered index scan across the votes table. Now, remember in Guy's session, he talked about how estimates versus actuals can be wildly off. Well, that affects this too. You'll see as this thing goes through that the first two operators have fairly accurate percentages. They'll go from 0 to 100%. But as we start going to this hash match, once data starts flowing into the hash match, you're going to see it go above and beyond past 100% because SQL Server's estimates were wrong. Gotchas with this. This is SQL Server 2014 Service Pack 1 or newer on the back end, Management Studio 2016 on the front end. This is for your currently executing queries. It isn't really obvious how you would get it for other people's currently running queries. There's some work that you have to do. You have to turn on some extended events plumbing that will start generating their live execution plan. And then after you've turned on the plumbing, you can go into Activity Monitor. And if you go into Active Expensive Queries, you'll be able to right-click on their query and show the live execution plan. Then you'll be able to kind of spy on what their query is doing. This is not turned on by default because it does have some overhead. So just be aware of that when you start playing around and going to learn more about that. They've supposedly made huge improvements to that on 2016 Service Pack 1 and in 2017 that it doesn't take as much overhead. Mike says, if I've got a database on compat level 110, will this still work? Yes. Radi says, has Matan's query progress been stolen? Yeah, it was the exact same idea. Microsoft just built it into the product. Matan was building on the DMVs that weren't publicly really talked about much when that first came out. All right, so we will, I'm going to stop talking about SQL Server Management Studio here, and I'm actually going to make Enrico the presenter just so that he can set up his desktop and whatnot. He's already in here in GroupBy, so he'll be able to share his machine here in a minute. I'm also going to let my dog go walk out through the rest of the hall. Hey, Pollo, how you doing? You doing okay? Yeah, you want to go walk around? So I'm going to go refill my coffee. Going to go refill my coffee and let Ernie go out walk around in the apartment. I will be back. I'll see you guys in a couple of minutes.